What can we do as landlords, small, non-institutional landlords, to build social cohesion and not just be these kind of like extractive investors who optimize and don't care about the communities we act in?
Welcome to the Going Long Podcast. We're back once again to continue to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And I am your host, Billy Keels, and I am so looking forward to sharing today's conversation with you. This is one that you're really going to enjoy. But before we do that, just a couple things that I want to continue to share with you, which I can't thank you enough for continuing to download the podcast, continuing to share the podcast, and especially those of you that have taken the time to leave just a couple seconds, an honest written review as well as a rating. It's one of the main reasons we continue to not only attract guests that are helping you to move forward faster, but also continue to move up in the podcast charts. So really appreciate that. And if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, just go ahead and leave a really quick, honest written review as well as a rating. I've got a little video here in the link, especially on the Apple Podcast platform. If you could take just a couple seconds, we'd really appreciate that. Also, too, there are so many of you that are asking or requesting that you want to be able to go back and see like some of the very first episodes. You probably want to laugh at me because, well, things were getting, wasn't necessarily feeling as comfortable as I am today. But anyway, hey, listen, whatever your reason, if you want to check out any of the previous guests, just go to billykeels.com. Once you're there, go to the podcast tab and you can check out every single episode that we have ever done. So once again, billykeels.com. Once you're there, go to the podcast tab and you can check out every single episode. You can listen to the videos, or you can watch the videos. You can listen to the audios as well. So with that, there are also one last thing, a number of you that are accredited investors and you want to be able to connect with other accredited investors. You want to be able to find or gain access to new deals. Happy to get and share that with you. If you are an accredited investor, just send me an email to aiclub@billykeels.com. Once again, just send an email to aiclub@billykeels.com. We'd be happy to connect with you. We'll get you onboarded and you can start to connect with other people. We're very much at the grassroots level. So this is probably like the perfect time to get in because everybody's going to get a chance to know one another and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So with that, I just want to talk to you about today's conversation. I know you're going to get a lot out of this. Very busy professionals. Many of you like to really get your hands dirty. You want to make sure that you really understand, especially when you're investing in real estate, whether you're doing it actively, whether you're doing it passively, you really want to understand one of the most important aspects of real estate investing, and that is managing the property. And so today's guest has lots of experience in that, also has an international background, originally from Canada, has lived in different countries, and also has loads and loads of experience, not just in property management and consulting around real estate. And I know you're going to get so much out of today's conversation. So in just a couple of seconds, we're going to get to that conversation with Terrie Schauer, and that's going to happen just after this. Are you looking for a way to get to long distance investing success, but not spending all the effort? You want to do it in a way that's much faster and it doesn't cause as much pain? Well, listen, I can save you all of that stress. Just go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes and you can pick up your free PDF to help you on your road to long distance investing success. So you know what? If you're ready to explore the mindful side of long distance real estate investing, then guess what? Today's a conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. I promise. You know what? Because today's guest, well, you know what? Aside from being a serial entrepreneur and business builder, also has over 20 years of experience, has been in both the property management as well as consulting side of the real estate business. And I'm sure she's been doing a lot of other things that she's really going to tell us about. She's also a leading authority on applying mindfulness principles to real estate investing. That really sounds cool. And she's also the co-host of 2 wealth as well as real estate podcasts. And she is the author of The Mindful Landlord. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Terrie Schauer. Terrie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I'm really looking forward to it. And you know what? I didn't even mention the fact that you're a 2-time champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I think is really awesome. And I'm sure you're going to tell us more about that, I hope. So here's the thing, Terrie, I love to ask everybody at least the same 5 questions. You're going to get 2 in the beginning, you're going to get 3 in the end. And then in the middle, I absolutely have no idea what we're going to talk about. But the thing is, you know what? I would like for us to go ahead and start getting into the conversation if you're ready.
Let's do it.
All right. You were born ready. I know you were. So here's the thing. Help us understand, where do you live in North America?
So I live in Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Very cool. So Montreal, Quebec, or Montreal, I guess some people would say as well. And help us understand, what's the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours, Terrie?
So I had the opportunity yesterday to interview a great guest called Rajan Makajani on the Mindful Wealth podcast. And it was just so awesome because, we talked to a lot of people about mindful investing and how to marry success with, positive social consequences. But a lot of the people we interview have it's a bit depressing, right? We have economists on the show and they kind of point to rising inequality and all kinds of stuff that's going wrong. Mm-hmm. And the conversation with Rajan was just so cool because he's somebody who does impact investing and consulting for companies of how they can better their environmental and social impact. And it was just so uplifting to have a conversation with someone who had some answers and some positive data. So.
Wow. So I love you sharing that. And also too, the fact of the matter is anybody that can actually make an impact, social impact positively and share positive energy. Love hearing that kind of stuff because I think we need a lot more of that nowadays. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. The other thing, Terrie, so here's the thing. The Going Long family, they kind of forgive me because I give myself this really, really impossible task of trying to tell your entire backstory in 4.5 seconds, which is impossible to do, right? So they always forgive me, or almost always forgive me. At least they tell me they do. So I would hope that you could also help me out here, Terrie. Could you help me by actually telling your backstory in your own words? And if you could also talk to us maybe about some of the major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey would really, really be helpful. And then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Sure. So I'll give you the elevator pitch version.
All right.
So really, I started out as a property manager, and more than that, an accidental property manager. So when I was 19, I moved to study in Toronto, and actually there was no space in student residence. So I ended up living in this crazy co-op house, which, the garbages were overflowing and it was really terribly managed. And I arrived there with all my furniture and couldn't deal with the mess. And so the first thing I did was clean everything up. And the very next day, my housemates voted me house manager. So there you go, 19. I was going to school to study. Yeah, going to school to study philosophy, and kind of ended up with a sideline gig as a property manager. And so, I took my knocks doing that. Actually, kind of liked it, and then ended up being a bit of a house hacker because I really enjoyed that kind of communal living arrangement as a student. And, then I went on to move a couple of other times. I studied in England, and then I studied in Vancouver. And so every time I moved, I tried to set up that kind of environment where, you had a bunch of foreign students living in a big house. And in that way you had sort of a community and a home away from home. And then, if you're asking what are the major decisions? So basically I, continued graduate school, and then at a certain point realized that I didn't actually want to be a professor. That was my game plan initially. Okay. And then I realized that just wasn't where I wanted things to go. And so then I went through this soul searching period of, I've been doing this property management thing kind of as a sideline. And I think I wanted to take a bigger role in my life. And so then I closed on a first property in Montreal with the help of Daddy, who lent me a down payment. And I set up the same business model. So really I created that kind of, house hacking thing where there's a bunch of students living together, furnished the rooms, and then rented out the rooms one by one. And then that worked so well that I was able to scale the business model, package it, and sell it to other landlords in the area who had a hard time renting their units. It's not a great area where I started out. So a lot of the landlords in the area were struggling to, have decent tenants and good rents. And then when I was 30, I had to actually make the real transition. I did this for a while, and then I was like, okay, I've come to the end of my studies. Am I going to now look for an academic job, or am I going to go out on a limb and do real estate full time? And so actually at the time I was boxing. This is a funny story. Tell it, please. Yeah. I was trying to get a kickboxing career started actually. And I got an opportunity to box semi-professionally in France. And so when I moved to France, I needed a day job because the prize money wasn't enough to live on. I think I was getting paid €200 a fight back then. Oh, okay. Yeah. And so I got a day job in a property management company with the idea that I'm going to learn how to do this professionally. And then when I'm done with France or with that phase, I'm going to open my own company and do it professionally. And so like, if I had to point to like a specific moment where, things flipped, it was really that 6 months where I had to like go through this like painful soul searching of like, am I going to leave, the academic world that I've invested 10 years of studies into without ever having really worked a day in my life in that, and then, follow my dreams, pursue real estate and kickbox. And, ultimately I ended up following my heart, and it was the right decision, but it was not an easy one.
Well, I can imagine that. Sorry, I cut you off there. I don't know if you wanted to continue on as well.
No, I was done.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so a lot of people would say, well, investing 10 years in academia and then deciding, well, maybe you want to pivot and do something different. For a lot of people, that can, as they would say here in Spain, is give them vertigo, maybe make them a little bit nervous. Of course, that's a literal translation, so it probably doesn't work too well directly in English. But anyway, but there's another thing that you said that I'm hoping that people actually heard, and it maybe makes them scratch their head, because in the beginning you said when you were in the when you're doing the property management piece, when you became the accidental landlord, or I would say the person leading the whole thing and making sure everything was what it was supposed to be, you said that you liked it. Now, I just want to make sure that you said that when you said that, not the environment that you were in, but you actually liked the role of property management. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to share with us, what was it about the role of property management that you loved? Or that you liked, that you liked.
No, and honestly, like it's kind of a mystery, because like so many, I talk to a lot of investors, everyone's like, you actually like that? And no, I mean, I do. Even today, I invest in Montreal, and like one of the reasons why I've continued to invest in Montreal is because I own a property management company here, and I actually really enjoy doing that work. And so, I mean, I think, one of it is that I'm just somebody who likes structures. I like to set up systems. I'm also, my husband always jokes with me, like, I like things to be like really organized, and I like follow up and move things forward. And so I said, okay, like you married, the fly that's like going to go like, too bad for you, you married me. But as a kind of a how can I say, a quality in business, especially in the landlording business, like I think that's probably the thing that you need if your value add is going to be landlording, right? Yeah. Because like I think in the real estate industry, there's like very different ways in which you can add value, and my value add is really with the management side, and so it's kind of that quality that and also just taking responsibility for other people's stuff. Like I tell that story about how I got voted property manager, and I think like the key ingredient of that is I found a mess. Nobody took responsibility for it. I walked into that situation, decided I'm going to clean this up because it bugs me, but it's bugging everybody else. And so like, if you just, basically roll up your sleeves and find something to carry, that's going to open all sorts of doors for you.
Yeah. So in just one of the things I want the Go Along family to understand is everyone has different passions, right? And so to be able to recognize that you love to, or you like to be able to have order, in the fact that lots of people don't, or are not talented at being able to do that, and you're able to take it to a level where you can actually scale, it's great. Because I'm sure, or let me guess, you ask, it probably doesn't even feel like work to you because you enjoy doing what you're doing, even as you're scaling it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, if I can take a parallel from sports, right? Like I think, I got into, combat sports, right? And like took it to a very high level. And so like, obviously I love those sports, but there's moments in the gym when it's work. And I think, definitely with my real estate career, like overall, I love it. There's a lot of things that like I really enjoy and I get up in the morning and I want to do the work, but there are aspects of it that are sometimes trying. And I think, if I had to point at one thing, it's the, tenant relations, like relationships with the difficult people that you meet. And like also, some of the social disconnects that we find ourselves faced with. I think like society, there's a lot of things that we have not yet solved for. And I think as landlords, sometimes we get sat on the rifts between different social classes or different, objectives. And so you end up having to deal with some of that stuff just because of where you chose to sit down. So.
Yeah, well, and being able to kind of recognize that, and like, as you said, you choose to sit down in a certain place, and so as a result, you will also inherit the environment, right? To a certain extent, you can create that. And I'm just curious also too, because you mentioned that you were in London, you were in France, you were on the west side of Canada as well. Just some of the places that you mentioned, and I know I've worked and traveled throughout some 86 different countries. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, which is very Midwest and things like that. But I feel like because of the travel and because of the interactions that I've had, it really changes the perspective. And so I know that you've traveled a lot as well. I would love for you to maybe give us some insight as to how that travel and those interactions with people from different countries, different language, different cultures actually helps you to provide the service and the environment that is, that's efficient as well as effective.
Yeah. So look, I'm going to answer that question without exactly answering it, and you'll see where I'm going. So,
Okay.
I grew up in Montreal is kind of divided, like English, French. And I grew up really within a very closed English community.
Okay.
And when I was, before I went to university, I chose to go to a French, it's called Cégep, but it's like the French, whatever, last few years of school,
Okay.
In Hochelaga-Maisonneuve, which is like a pretty low income neighborhood. And I think that like some of the lessons that I learned, or like those, experiences that help broaden your horizon, like they really happened for me in my own city. And maybe, as I've like moved to other places to study, or then in Marseille or whatever, the real like shock of meeting people who have very different ideas and very different expectations, that actually happened for me right at home, just crossing kind of like a linguistic and a class divide. And I think that that's like very formative experiences in terms of like, definitely in terms of landlording, because, if you find yourself in the position of a landlord, like probably maybe you and your tenants are going to come from a similar background or socioeconomic class, but chances are not. And so getting the opportunity to really like be within that community, like let me understand it in a way that had I just, remained within my bubble, I would not have.
Yeah. So I definitely can understand that. And having had that opportunity at a younger age, fantastic. And then also being able to then see it on another level. I didn't actually do it in my local hometown, but you also start to see there are similarities no matter where you are in the world. I mean, you're talking about where you live, and I live here in Barcelona, and there's a very similar type of cultural mixture, right? That happens, whether it be linguistically or whether it be culturally or historically and all those types of things. So you can actually get a lot of that even at home in your own backyard, which I think is fantastic. One of the other things that I did want to just talk about really quickly, because one of the premises of the show is, right, we want people to feel comfortable and confident investing beyond their backyard. And so you are from an expert in the area of mindfulness as it relates to real estate and how you bring that together. But just out of curiosity, because as we feel comfortable and confident beyond our backyard, I would be curious if you could share some of the things that you're seeing that people that want to understand more about your local location, like Montreal, like some of the things that may really inspire people to want to understand more about it as a place to travel, as a place to visit, and also as a place to invest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is something that we're going to see more as time goes on, because, there are urban centers where there are particular markets in which it makes sense to place capital at this time. And then those markets things happen and it makes less sense. And so what I can say about Montreal and like, I guess, Quebec more generally is that, this is a market that has made sense for some time and continues to make sense today. And I think if you match, let's say, indicators like political and economic stability, and then you match that with places that are maybe cosmopolitan enough where you can find someone who will translate your understanding, let's say as a European investor, right? Actually, it's interesting you asked me, because about 30% of my clients are Europeans. So because I worked in France, I kind of know both systems. And so I'm able to translate for them what is happening to their money, what are the differences between their system and our system. And so, in terms of building that confidence, right? Like it's about identifying markets that you think make sense, and then building those relationships with people who can bridge those gaps for you. Because at least initially, you might not have the vocabulary, or you might come with your understanding of your ecosystem. And then it's about educating yourself about the other ecosystem and seeing what are those challenges and what are those things I need to find solutions for.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you bring it down at the end of the day, because it is about finding solutions, right? And so in the exact same way that you have an understanding of the French language, French culture, because you actually lived in France, you built a network there. It's one of the things that like to typically say here is really as someone who is investing whatever it is, your time, your capital, it's really understand what's the benefit that you're looking to gain from your own perspective, and then afterwards go to the location where you're going to have the highest probability of gaining that benefit. And then from there, it's about building the team, right? It's about having someone who understands the location, who's able to do that translation, as you talked about, whether it's currency, whether it's just political environment, it's the economic environment. And then from there, it's really the investment. It doesn't really make a difference, because as long as that investment understands you're with a part of a team that is able to manage that investment, it's in the location that gives you the highest probability of getting whatever your benefit that you're looking for, then hey, everything is really much in line to give you the highest probability of success. Wow, don't you just love this conversation? This is amazing. This is fantastic. And so just really quickly, I just wanted to remind you, for those of you that are looking to create more options for yourself, get there faster, and do that with long distance investing, make sure that you go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid, so that you can avoid all those mistakes, get to your goals faster and sooner. Once again, that's billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. Now back to the conversation. So with that, there's also another thing, because I mentioned that you were a best-selling author, right? And so maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that, because one of the things I've typically find, or we like to find, is that when you have experience and you've gone to build businesses, et cetera, there aren't so many people that actually take the time to share that in a book form, right? You've actually done that. Would love for you to talk to us a little bit about that, and kind of what was the inspiration for you to even think about writing your first book?
Yeah. So, like having worn the property manager's hat, like obviously people who want to, roll up their sleeves and do some of the work themselves need property management knowledge. So that's a bit of a no-brainer, but there are tons of property management books out there. And so I guess
I'm sorry, Terrie, I'm going to stop you because you just said something that is super important, but I think a lot of people, just kind of go right over, because even if you are going to purchase a property, unless you are going to manage it, you're going to need property management. Can you just repeat that again? Because I think sometimes people just feel like, I'm just going to buy a property and go to the property manager, and they don't need the knowledge. Please repeat what you just said.
No, you absolutely need to know how to manage your properties, right? That's like thinking that you're going to open a business. And, so many people make this mistakes, right? Like it's not because you're the best mechanic. It's not because you make the best pies that you're going to open a successful garage or a successful bakery, right? Like you need the skills. So it's not because you can get a mortgage and because you know how to use a screwdriver that you're going to be a good landlord. Like you actually need to have some of that management knowledge. And obviously, like you can acquire it. It's not rocket science. You can acquire it on the ground, but you do need to acquire that knowledge. And you can either pay for it, you can hire a property manager, but the more you know and understand what the property manager does, the better you're going to be able to kind of keep an eye on that, as opposed to just giving them the keys and forgetting about it.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. And so then, so you understood how that worked. And then, but then from there, what was the inspiration to actually take what you knew to go into, to write the book?
Yeah. So basically it came from two dissatisfactions with some of the other stuff that's out there. And I would say the first dissatisfaction is I was able to see through my martial arts career, just how important having a really solid mindset is. And like in real estate, it can help you, but in combat sports, you will get nowhere unless you have a very, very solid mental ecosystem. And so I went through this whole learning process with something called the Warrior's Way, which is basically this way that the ancient samurai used to train their minds so that they could be very effective. And because I went through that process in martial arts, I was able to kind of take those skills and apply them to real estate investing. And it meant that every time I had like a specific shift or a specific behavior or a reframing that I had to do, it was actually very easy because I'd already trained my mind ahead of time. And so I find that it's a lot like dieting. Like everybody knows what they have to do to lose 5-10 pounds, but nobody does it. And why is that? It's a mindset problem. And so that's the same. You want to get good at anything. All the knowledge in the world won't help you unless you're able to apply it. So, I wanted to write a book that meshes that with real estate investing. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is really what I call like the mindful wealth aspect. And so that is that, in the real estate industry, a lot of times we get obsessed with financial metrics, more doors, more dollars, more deals, and that becomes how we measure ourselves. But that ultimately, if you're looking to live a full life, you need to understand what is the position of finance in my well-being. And then what are the effects of my actions? Because, again, as landlords, like we're making, even if we're small time landlords, a lot of us make similar decisions in similar contexts. Those actions have repercussions. They change communities, they change neighborhoods, they affect, disproportionately low income people. And if we make those decisions, like we have to do it within a social matrix. And it seems to me there's a real lack of that. So I guess, the book was my attempt to bring those two threads and mesh them with property management, but to do it in such a way that you can, on the one hand, tune up your mindset. And on the other hand, understand, like, if I live in a sick community, if I'm healthy, ultimately that's not going to make you happy, right? You want your kids to be able to go out and play in the street. And like, you do that by building a cohesive community, not by extracting wealth and keeping it for yourself.
So. And I love the fact that you touch on this, and I know that there are a lot of people that are listening, because we have so many high paid professionals, and are either just getting started or are looking to actually amplify what they are doing in terms of typically thinking in terms of the number of assets that they have, but also there is a consistent desire to make a better impact, like in a local impact, right? And social impact, et cetera. But sometimes people don't really understand what they can do to actually make sure that whatever they're doing, that they're making a positive impact. So maybe you could share maybe one or two things that someone who really genuinely wants to make that impact, that they can either ask the right questions or move in a certain direction, or request that certain things are done, so that aside from having some type of a financial benefit, there's also the social impact, positive social impact that they're looking to make.
So look, I really wish that I had a beautiful answer for that question. I think right now I'm kind of more at the awareness stage. So really, like what the book, part of what I'm trying to do in the book is to just raise maybe awareness around some of those issues. And basically, like my goal, so I also co-host the Mindful Wealth podcast, and one of the things we're trying to do with season 2 is to get some answers to those questions, because I'm sure that there are a lot of, social impact. There's like a lot of press around social impact investing in the corporate space, but I don't think that we've really done what we can to import it into real estate. And so I would love to come on this show 6 months from now and tell you, okay, I've talked to a few people who are running great initiatives in different cities, and this is the 1, 2, 3 of what they recommend. And here's how I started to implement it. So I think that's my goal for 2022 is to really, aside from just raising awareness, which is what I've been doing up until now with the book and the podcast, I want to try and get some answers. Like, what can we do as landlords, small, non-institutional landlords, to build social cohesion and not just be these kind of like extractive investors who optimize and don't care about the communities we act in.
Well, and I think, so this is once again, having the idea, and then not just leaving it as an idea, taking action, right? That you have a platform, you have your podcast, the new version that's coming out as well, which is really, now that you have the curiosity and you want to raise awareness, is then how do you take it to the next step? I actually have 1 or 2 ideas of people that I'm sure will be able to also make a positive impact. So we'll talk about that afterwards. You mentioned, and I kind of teased it a little bit in the very beginning, and you've talked about your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. And a lot of times, because I've spoken to a number of people that have taken to championship level or professional or whatever the case may be. And I'm also curious, like, through that training and through championships and through competition, also, what does that particular part of your life, how is that also impacting what you're doing on a daily basis, or maybe some of the ways that you are making decisions to positively impact others?
Yeah, well, I think it's really comes down to when I was talking about mindset, right? Because I think if you want to take things to, a championship level, the level of discipline that you need to carry through in all the time. You know what I mean? Like the example I love to use is that everybody wants to have a 6-pack, but if you go home every day and eat a bag of chips, then it's never going to happen. And so, like, it's one thing to want the result, but it's another thing to want the lifestyle or to be able to create the lifestyle that's going to bring you those results. And so I think like definitely, you know, in terms of discipline and like just understanding like where is that disconnect between here's where I want to go, here's where I am, and this is what I need to go to get there. And I think that a lot of times people underestimate maybe the massive change or the massive discipline that they're going to have to go through to get there. Right. So I think that's one thing. And I think the other thing is just in terms of managing, you know, fear and negative emotions and limiting beliefs, like all these things that these barriers that are really in our own heads. And, you know, I think for anybody who's like succeeded at anything at a high level, but definitely in sports, like you're constantly like when you're about to go and, you know, step in the ring, like I competed in jiu-jitsu later, but it's less direct than kickboxing because every time you step in the ring, like you can get damaged, you can get knocked out. And so you have to be in such a mind state because you're going to be having all these fearful thoughts and you have to just find a way to go past that and do what you know you can do anyway. And so that process of just being able to walk through negative mental manifestations to get to whatever you want to get to, it's just like a methodology for getting out of your comfort zone. And, you know, like once you've honed that in this like very intense environment, you can really apply it anywhere else.
Wow. So once again, you know, talking about the positive impact either individual or indoor collective sport can really help your mindset when you start talking about things like, you know, fear and how you can break through that and what are the, you know, basic steps that you can take to actually start to achieve, the goals or that you've put out for yourself, which I think is fantastic. One of the other things, so this comes back a little bit and you've kind of touched on it, but the whole concept of a mindful landlord, right? There's this concept, and maybe for some people that are brand new or just getting started, they're kind of like, all right, well, yeah, this all sounds really good, and this is fantastic, and I want to do this, but you know, I've heard this mindfulness stuff, and I've also heard now this landlording, and so it sounds like, you know, Terrie's found the perfect formula to be able to bring these two together. So the whole concept of the mindful landlord, how would you really encapsulate that?
Yeah. Well, so I think you start with the definition of mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? Cool. It's really awareness. And so it's, you know, you can say when people get like a bit hippy dippy, they'll be like, oh, remain in the present moment, breathe in, breathe out. That's like a little bit up here and a little bit airy fairy, but there are actually concrete mental techniques that you can practice that will allow you to become more aware of things. Mm-hmm. And as you increase awareness, everything else starts to fall into place. So you are able to have increased performance. You're able to better apply some of that data because you find yourself understanding like it's actually in this minute and this micro decision where I'm determining what my outcomes are going to be. So, you know, that's one personal aspect. But again, if we bring this back to like the community aspect as well, like as you increase mindfulness, you become aware that like, I'm not living in a vacuum, and the decisions that I make or that I make for my family or that I make personally have this kind of, the butterfly flaps its wings and then there's a tornado across the country because of those like small things that add up. And so if I could like really say by increasing your awareness, it has all these different effects. And so as you apply that to landlording, it means that in your real estate practice, because it's a practice, like being an investor, being a landlord, it's a practice. It's something you do every day. And if you bring mindfulness into that, it's going to make you more effective and it's going to make you able to do it in a way that I would hope is more socially sustainable.
And so by being able to do that, so just to give someone a very practical example, so you become much more aware. I mean, I've done things like everything from just kind of stopping for literally 5 minutes, because when you're in the middle of a very busy professional day, you kind of just say, all right, listen, everything is going kind of absolutely manic. And I just want to stop and literally sit down 5 minutes and I'm just going to breathe, take in some breath and just recognize what's happening around me, air, things like that. Being able to then translate that from a landlord perspective, would you say maybe tactically is something where you can say, okay, there's a lot of different aspects that are happening on a day-to-day basis at a particular property. And you just need to kind of stop for a moment and take a look at literally what is happening at a particular property. Are you making decisions that are based on simply revenue? Or are you making decisions based on how it can potentially positively impact someone and be efficient? Would that maybe be an idea, like very technical?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think, for me, one of the places where this is like the starkest is definitely with tenant relations, right? Because it's possible to get like very frustrated. And, you often deal with people who are maybe not treating the property in the way that you would, it's yours, right? And they're treating it in a way that you would not treat your own things. So then that can create frustration. And also, there's often like a lot of demands, and then the demands are not always, people don't always necessarily 100% understand the building systems they're interacting with. So then they, assail you with demands that maybe, as somebody who knows that, you think, okay, this may be a little bit, I don't know, in French, we'd say farfelu, like it's a little bit, whatever. But then, one of the places where mindfulness comes in there is to just like, as you say, take a step back, be aware, like, okay, this is another human being. This could be my mom or my aunt or someone else's mom or someone else's aunt. And that if you make a commitment to deal with those people with respect, and even if you can't always meet all of their demands, just the fact that you make an effort to like deal with them with respect, communicate with them with respect, and just have that basic human interaction in a nice way. I mean, that's a good example. And I found that that's really, when I'm able to do that, it makes the world of difference in terms of also even finding, win-wins in particular situations, or just having it be a more human environment in which to offer people the service that is their housing, right? So.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Absolutely makes a lot of sense. And then I know we talked about a little bit earlier, you were talking about some of the things that you want to, or some of the things that you will be doing in terms of the podcast, moving from awareness to actual tactical or either strategic ideas or tactical actions that can help to make social impact. I also mentioned that you have already written a book as a best-selling author. And I know that maybe just around the corner, you're thinking about bringing out a newer edition or an updated version. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that. Kind of what's the reasoning for bringing up the updated version? What are some of the things that we can expect there?
So a very kind of a funny, again, another accidental set of circumstances. So when I released the book in 2019, in June of 2019, I did it with a publisher. And the publisher was then a casualty of COVID because, as you know, a lot of businesses went under. And so the publisher went under. And so I kind of had no choice but to take over the publishing and then come, with self-publishing. But I could have just come out with the same book again. And then I thought, no, I'm going to take the time to sit down and update this, because I think it's such a crucial moment in terms of there's been major disruptive forces, and the world that we live in today was not the world I wrote the book in 2019. And so, I think one of the things that I tried to do is just bring some of those market challenges in a little bit more. So, I'm sure in Europe, you're looking at the same things, but in North America, we have these rising asset prices. We have more speculators coming into the market, which then creates pressure to raise rents. But then what are the consequences of that? And, are we heading ourselves into a bubble? Like, there are all these kind of like market related questions. And then, the issue of widening income gaps and these various issues around, affordable housing and vulnerable populations, those were on the horizon when the pandemic hit 2 years ago. But if anything, it's made those issues way more front and center. And so, in writing a second edition of the book, like that's really what I tried to do, is to bring those two things out and just frame it, update it for everything that's happened. Because if you just republish a book that was done before COVID and you don't mention what's happened in the last 2 years, it's kind of like the elephant in the room that nobody talked about. So
yeah, perfect. So really it's about making sure that the context, everyone has the right context and being able to apply the lessons from the first book in this new reality, I guess, that we're living
exactly in the new normal.
Yeah, the new normal. I like that. So listen, here's the thing, Terrie. Like, I want to keep talking forever, but we kind of got to get to the going long final three. And the thing is, I never ask any guest, and today you're our special guest, the going long final three, unless you tell me that you're ready for me to ask you. So are you ready?
Go for it.
I knew you were going to, I thought you were going to be like, I'm ready, but go for it. It works the same. So here's the thing. So we started with you over on the other side of the pond there in North America in Quebec, Montreal specifically. But I would love to bring it back to this side of the pond, since now Europe is my adopted home. So I would love for you to share with the Going Long family, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited, and we know you've lived in Europe because you told us earlier, or is still on your bucket list to visit?
So I mean, I love Marseille. I lived there for 3 years and kind of had some very formative moments there. And I really love Marseille. I just can't wait to be able to travel again, that I can go back.
All right. Fantastic. So a vote for Marseille. I think that may be our first vote, which is kind of unbelievable because it's an amazing city. We can talk about stories of Marseille and offline, but fantastic. So I appreciate that. And then the second of the Going Long final three really has to do with a lot of the good fortune that I've had to meet a lot of successful people. And I would consider you to be someone who's very successful as well. And one of the things that I've noticed about very successful people, Terrie, is like they, unlike most people, like one of the main reasons that they're successful is that when they try something, they get it right the first time, which means that they can move much. I did that again. I can't believe I did it again. I messed that up all the time. No, not really. It's kind of a joke. It's an inside joke between me and the Going Long family. Don't worry.
I got it.
Don't worry.
30 seconds later, I got it.
Don't worry. Just a joke. So, but here's the thing, like in all reality, like everybody makes mistakes, Terrie, everybody. And the thing is that people that are very successful, the reality is they make a whole lot more mistakes than most people, a whole lot more. And the reality is, and this is no joke, they do one thing very, very differently. Every time that there is a major mistake or learning opportunity, or however you want to call it, they stop, they take note of what happened, they learn from the mistake, and then they go out and they put strategies, tactics, or actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same mistake happening to them again. So I was hoping that you could go to a place where you had made a mistake or had a learning opportunity and not really focus on that. Don't want you to share that. But what's the one lesson that you took away from that learning opportunity mistake that you know someone today in the Going Long family really needs to hear so that they can have a lesser probability of that exact same thing happening to them?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because I think it's super important. And, you know, if you were to have frame that question a different way and just ask me, what's your one piece of advice? I would say it's take responsibility.
Love that.
And for me, that was actually the main separating ingredient of when I started succeeding at stuff. Because like I would say up until I was maybe 26, 27, I really didn't have this ethic of just saying, what can I take ownership of? And, you know, that meant that all the mistakes that I made, I was just never able to like move on from them. I wasn't able to learn from them because they were always someone else's fault. And so my one piece of advice is basically, if there's something that you don't like, something you want to change, find something you can have control over. Like find something that you can pick up and lift, you know?
Awesome.
And I have this issue all the time when, like, let's say, you know, I'll have a fight with my husband or something. And like, I'll tell it to one of my girlfriends and she'll be like, no, he didn't. And what happened? And and I'm like, no. What did I do to create that situation? Because other people will do stuff. The world will throw things your way. But what did I do to make it worse? Because 100% I did something. And that's the only thing I have control over is what was my add into this, and to take responsibility for that makes all the difference.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So being able to look inward, take responsibility. Awesome. Appreciate you sharing that with us, Terrie. And then lastly, and once again, just to remind everybody that, yes, you've written your book, and we're going to make sure that we put the link to Mindful Landlord here in the show notes today. So make sure, Going Long family, you want to check that out as well. But as we wrap things up, once again, want to help everyone to feed the mind. So would love for you to share what your one book recommendation would be for the Going Long family today.
Well, since we're talking about taking responsibility, and it's my favorite subject, I'm going to pick 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, because I feel like that's just a really, you know, Peterson is who he is, but like the real taking responsibility and concrete strategies of how to bring that into your life. I think if you're not familiar with those ideas, you really should be.
All right. Fantastic. So, Mr. Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. Appreciate that. I think that's actually the first time anyone's recommended it. So I appreciate you sharing it there. And I guess I can't believe how quickly these conversations go by. Like they just fly by every single time, Terrie. And I'm just thinking about you telling us from the very beginning that you became an accidental landlord because, well, you were already from the very beginning, you saw something that was happening. You took responsibility for it. The people that were in the room there with you were like, hey, listen, wow, Terrie's really got a knack for this stuff. So you became an accidental landlord. From there, you started realizing, hey, listen, you really like the environment that you were in and having an international type of environment. And you moved around and you were in London and you were in Vancouver and you had experiences where you decided, hey, listen, you know what? Not only am I enjoying this, I'm very good at this, and also want to be able to go to an area or be able to take it to a place where you're able to scale the business. Now, if the pandemic hadn't gotten in the way, you'd probably already be doing this on all different sides of the pond or both sides of the pond. But the reality is, well, in the meantime, you've figured out how you can update the book that we've already talked about before. So you're going to give it the right context so that everybody can actually say, hey, listen, this is a new normal, as you said, the new place and the new way that we're living. And you're continuing to make a positive impact on others. And I know because I'm enjoying this conversation and I know I'm going to be able to get in touch with you soon as well anyway, but could you help us and help the entire Going Long family figure out what is the best way to get in touch with you, find out more about what you're doing, and also how you may be able to help the Going Long family?
So basically you just want to type my name into Google. You're going to find my website. So terrieschauer.com, or you can find me on any social media, and that will take you into kind of, my ecosystem to connect with me. Obviously also the site, Mindful Landlord. So just mindfullandlord.com is where you can get a copy of the book.
Awesome. Fantastic. So appreciate that. And we'll also include that in the show notes. And Going Long family, do me a favor. When you do reach out to Terrie, whatever social media outlet is, especially if you have the opportunity, especially if it's LinkedIn specifically, let her know that you actually heard her in the conversation here, or you watched the conversation, because it's just going to help the two of you have a better conversation and give some context to why you would continue to move forward in the conversation. So with that, Terrie, listen, I just want to say thank you very much for investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Billy.
All right. And if you give me just like 2 seconds, I just want to say the last words to the Going Long family. Listen, really quickly, Going Long family, you heard it. Here today, Terrie shared her story, helped to give you some context in the way that you can go out and be an even better landlord, and also look to make even more positive social impact and get educated. She's made it really simple. Make sure you reach out to her. Make sure you give her the context when you do reach out. And you know what? I'm really looking forward to welcoming you back on the very next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.